Hope you guys got your cup of coffee here. And today on Shop Talk, we're going to talk with Judy Howard. A rather interesting story about her book, Truck Stop. And it's kind of interesting because my own book is also titled Truck Stop. And that's actually how I came across this title. I was thinking it was a unique title, Truck Stop, and of course you would think it is. And when I was thinking of a title for my own book, I was thinking it was unique. Apparently not. Okay, this is how this one came about, and I think you guys would really like to take a chance and actually read this one. And I read the initial script and book and everything, and it's a worthy story. So we're going to talk today with Judy Howard, and of course we'll talk to her about her other titles too. And sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and let's get started with this show. Morning. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
And where to start? I mean, because you've written how many books now?
7 books I've written, and working. I'm really struggling with starting a new book because I'm having trouble knowing what I want to say. But
I think every writer has that problem every once in a while.
Well, this is the first for me, and it began when COVID hit, and not that I even believe in that, but I just struggled because with all the censorship and all whatever, I don't know. I just wonder what I really have to say, because what I have to say isn't well received. I don't know, but I don't know. I'm just confused, and I'm coming out of it. So at least I finished my 8th book. So it is not published yet, and it's called Activate Love Mode. So
right. So let's rewind the hands of time here.
Yes.
To when you first wanted to start being a writer, and what led up to the idea behind Truck Stop?
Well, first of all, 80% of the people have thought about writing a book. I don't know if you know that statistic or not, but I was never one of them. I was a dog groomer since I was 11 years old, and never, ever even considered writing a book. And I was only my husband had passed away, and I was trying to semi-retire from my business. So I took this class on creative writing for fun, only for fun. It's not, I wasn't thinking, I'll write a book. I just thought it would be fun. And they had an exercise there. Very first was what I know now as a writing prompt. And she asked us to write about the color red for 10 minutes. And I said, who could write for 10 whole minutes on the color red? I thought it was kind of a stupid exercise, but I wanted to be a good student. So I did. And I was just amazed at what came out of my head. I mean, it was like, wow, where was all of that? And I just got hooked on writing. And I said, if I'm going to take this class, I want to try and write a book. Might as well, because I don't like to waste time. So I started with this first book, and it's Coast to Coast with a Cat and a Ghost. And I just with the help of the writing group, we came up with that title when I finished writing it. And but it's when my husband passed away 18 years ago now, I had wanted to drive my motorhome across country from California to Florida to visit a friend, and my friends worried about me traveling alone. So I said, I made this life-size doll to sit in the passenger seat of the motorhome, and my husband had been a Harley guy and kind of looked like you. He had long hair, ponytail, and anyway, so the doll had this Harley hat, Harley earring, bald head, ponytail, and I traveled in my motorhome. So when I decided to write the first book, I said I'll write about that trip across country alone as a woman in her motorhome, overcoming the loss of her husband. And that doll starts complaining every time I make a wrong turn or do something wrong. So it takes on the ghost of the dead husband. And then I had a cat that added his antics to it, named Sportster. So that was my first book, and it did really well. It was right at the beginning of self-publishing, and it did really well. And I by this time, I'm addicted. I'm hooked on writing. It's something to do at 3 o'clock in the morning when you can't sleep. And I just loved it. I was just amazed at all the shit that was coming out of my head. So I wondered now, it was a memoir. And so it dealt with my abusive marriage and whatever. But I wanted to, like I said, I was hooked on writing, so I wanted to write another book. But I was wondering, I didn't have anything else to say about myself then. So I wondered if I could make something up. So I wrote Going Home with a Cat and a Ghost. Same character, Judy Howard, which is me. And she's on her way back to her 40th high school reunion in Illinois to go meet up with the old high school boyfriend. So I figured if I can't meet a man, I'll make one up. And that's working really well for me even today. Anyway, that was a little cozy mystery. And it did really well, too. So now I'm thinking, well, maybe I really am a writer. And I really do believe writers have a lot of power, and words are powerful, and we can change things. And so I started taking myself more seriously as my subjects in my book. And I wrote 2 books, Masada's Marine and Masada's Mission, which are both about a dog becoming a service dog for an Iraq veteran with PTSD. And I'm proud to say they had been carrying, I haven't checked on it lately, but they had been carrying it. Both of those books in the General Patton Museum Library in California.
Oh, wow.
General Patton Museum in California. So anyway, they did really well too, and they're well received. And but then I always say the cat, became disgruntled because he was, only co-author of those first 2 books. So he broke out and decided to write a book of his own called Activate Lion Mode. And it's kind of an incredible journey story. We get it's a novel, and we're traveling in the motorhome, and I get in an accident and I get hauled off to the hospital, and he gets tossed out into the Olympic forest. And it's okay, though. Don't worry. He is a cat, and all he ever wanted to do was live in the wild, So, of course, he finds out it's not all it's cut out to be. And it's an incredible journey, him finding his way back home. And when I wrote Masada's Marine and the other book, that was emotionally exhausting. I did a lot of research. I've never been in the military. I don't know anybody in the military, so I had to do a lot of research, especially, of course, on PTSD. And I really thought I'd never write again because I just didn't want to do it. It was very emotional to do that. But yet, like I say, I am addicted to writing. So I thought, well, I'll just write a fun book. And that was Sportster's book, and it's the Activate Lion Mode. And it was all from his point of view. And it started out as a fun book. And after I started feeling better writing it, about a third of the way into the book, I decided to touch on a little bit on sex trafficking. So when I did that, you ask about how Truck Stop came about. So I touched on sex trafficking, and I just thought, well, it can take place in a truck stop. What better place, So anyway, that's where I did it. There's a lot of personal things in my book that I don't all care to reveal right now. But anyway, the book was so it took place in a truck stop, and I wanted, after I finished that book, I really thought I'd like to delve more into sex trafficking and stuff. And so
that was the interesting element about this book.
Yes.
was the element of sex trafficking, and it's a topic that's not really discussed too much.
No, it isn't. And I kind of joke around now, because when I wrote Masada's Marine and Masada's Mission, it was right when people were just becoming aware of PTSD, and the soldiers were coming back from Iraq and all that stuff, So, and again, nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to hear about shit happening. Right. So anyway, I always joke around and I say, I put a cute little dog on the cover, and tell people it's about a cat, and they says, "Oh, I love cats, I love dogs," and then they read it, and then they get hit with the sex trafficking or whatever the issue is that I'm dealing with. But anyway, that's how.
But as writers, that's what we do. We actually put pieces of ourselves in a story.
Yeah. And I've had so much good feedback about Masada's Marine, not so much about Truck Stop, because I did probably because I did touch a little, maybe too much on the sex part, but yeah, so I really believe that's a way to get our message across and what we believe, and that's probably why I'm struggling now as to what I want to write about. So anyway,
so with the idea behind Truck Stop, when you first started writing about that, it seemed to me like, because what was interesting about that story was you took a character all the way from his teenage years,
right?
You wrote about his whole life in the trucking industry, all the way up till he's almost an old man, but he's not quite an old man,
right? Yeah.
So and I thought,
so you want to know where that came from? All right.
How did you put all this together? Because that, and you've never been in the trucking industry, have
you? Pardon me?
You've never been in the trucking industry or anything, and I do know that you research considerably.
Yes, yeah, that's how we met, really, because I was hanging out on all the Facebook trucker websites, and Facebook groups and stuff, and that's how we met. Right. And I was saying, I'm writing a book about Truck Stop, and you says, well, I'm writing a book about Truck Stop. And I said,
I had just published it too. That was the funny thing. I had just published it, and I was like, I got the most unique title. And I posted it up there, and then you commented on, "Hey, I got a book called Truck Stop," and I was like, "Well, I guess that titles are not unique."
Yeah, well, I thought, I better change. Everybody saying I change it. I says, well, I don't know. He doesn't seem to be bothered by it. That mine's named that too. And your book is wonderful. I mean, it's really, you're a very good writer. I was very impressed with your writing. So, in fact, I've probably stolen a few phrases here and there. In my writing
about it.
Yes, I love how you write. So how did you go so about you're not okay, well, you're not buying the part about the sex trafficking and stuff. So the thing is I feel sometimes like I'm writing my future, because the very first book that I wrote, Coast to Coast with a Cat and a Ghost, ended. By the time I finished that book, I knew I wanted to write another one. And like I say, Coast to Coast with a Cat and a Ghost is a memoir. But and because I'm a brand new writer, I knew nothing about writing. I didn't know how to build a series before I ever started or anything like that. So when I wrote Truck Stop, when I wrote Coast to Coast with a Cat and a Ghost, I ended it, the ending with she had gone. The character had gone across country, traveling in her motorhome all the way to the coast and back, and she was empowered because she had done that all on her own. And but because I knew I wanted to write another one, I had her come home, and she gets a phone call, and and it's from the old high school boyfriend. And so he is inviting her to the 40th high school reunion. So that last part in Coast to Coast was not true, but I wanted it to be lead into another book because I knew I wanted to write another book. So that's how that came about. So I guess I stopped with Truck Stop. Truck Stop is last book I just published, but before that, and after the Cats 2 books, I wrote a book, an autobiography, and it's called The Grieving Gift, and it dealt with the death of my sister and dealing with grief. And in the process of that book, I ended up, to make a long story, because we don't have a lot of time, is the high school boyfriend found me. The high school boyfriend who I imagined in that very first book about, and so in the second book, she's going back to Springfield, Illinois to go hook up with the old high school boyfriend. In my mind, as I wrote that, it was my high school boyfriend that I had. So So anyway, in the high school boyfriend finds me, and we found out that the heat was still there and everything else, but it was impossible because he was married. So with all of the frustration of that and the attraction and everything else, I didn't want to write it from my viewpoint. So I wrote a story, and he had, amazingly enough, he had been, like I said, already written about not Truck Stop, but I'd written, so touched on it in the other books. So anyway, he surprised, he had been a long haul trucker for 30 years. And so I figured I'd just hit it all at once, and I would write our story from his point of view.
Oh,
so,
okay. I got you.
So there you go. I've never told it publicly. A lot of people know, but not publicly what I did. So anyway, that's the high school boyfriend. Like I say, back in the first book in 2010, when I started writing, and I wrote the book Going Home with a Cat and a Ghost, I envisioned him, the woman going back and meeting him. And so anyway, that actually happened. So there you go.
Right.
And did I answer your question? I jumped around.
Yeah, you did, actually. I was kind of curious.
And I'm
blushing. Like, where did she come up with this story?
I know. I mean, it's like an amazing tour, story, and that wasn't able to happen, so
right.
There you
go. I read the script, and I read the book.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, this is actually, it's a really good book, and she actually got everything correct on the trucking industry part. How did you research for that? Did you actually go to truck stops and talk to drivers? Or?
Well, when I started writing it, I says, God, I haven't even been in a truck. So I was traveling. I was full time in my motorhome at the time. So I was in a campground, and right across the street was a Freightliner, a dealership. And so I just walked over and I said, hey, I'm writing a book. And I says, can I sit in one of your trucks? And of course, what, and you may know this too, but when you pull the author card, everybody thinks you're really cool. So of course he let me climb in the truck, and he's telling me all about it and everything else. But mainly what I did is I stalked a lot of Facebook pages and listened to the language and listened to the talk and everything else. And I read a lot of books about trucking. I probably read every novel there was. Yours was especially good. And but it just
mine's told, just for the audience, my book's told from the diesel mechanic aspect of the industry.
Yes.
And Judy's is from the truck driver's aspect of the industry. So
right.
That's what was interesting about it.
And what just for some of the things when I was doing, and it's I tell everybody when I tell about all my books when I'm promoting my books and stuff. I says, all my books are family friendly, except Truck Stop is not. And but it's I forgot where I was going with this, but it was a fun book to write, and the women talk, the few women that have read it say I captured the male perspective well. And personally, I don't think male and females are that different. We're just, we're different in some ways, but we all, everybody in this world wants the same thing. We all want love and acceptance and approval. So it's pretty, to me, it's pretty easy to capture the male's point of view, but because we do think the same, we just cover it with different things.
Right. Yeah. Now, the sex trafficking thing, like I said, it's not a very aspect, it's one of those aspects that, especially nowadays, whenever it needs to be open for conversation,
Yes, and sex trafficking, prostitution. When I talk about writing my future, that he ended up finding me on Facebook because I posted. I had been in Tucson doing the Tucson Writers Book Festival, and I had went to a horse show and was posting pictures on horses. And one of my friends says, do you ride? And I said, no, but I says, when I was in high school, my best girlfriend and I, we both had horses, and we rode until those horses every day until those horses' feet were just dragging. And I started thinking about her, and I wondered what happened to her. So I Googled her, and by God, she lived right there in Tucson. And I called her up, and we met for dinner, and she's telling me all about how she had been to the 50th high school reunion. And so I asked about him, and she was saying, do you remember so-and-so and so-and-so? And I says, well, I don't remember anybody from high school except for you and our other girlfriend who rode with us and this high school boyfriend. And I says, what about him? You went to I wanted to know, because I had looked him occasionally over the years and wondered what happened to him. I'd met him in 1987, but I was back in Illinois for Annette's anniversary or something. But anyway, so she says, well, I don't know. I don't think I saw him. He may be dead. And I says, oh, okay. So anyway, I go back to California after the book festival, and 3 days later, he contacted me on Facebook and had said he had been looking for me ever since 1987, and my God, he's gushing. And at that time in 1987, I was married and he was not. And so anyway, he's gushing, and I'm thinking, well, I'm not married now. And of course, it comes out that he is married. So,
wow.
Yeah. And timing is everything in life, isn't it? We still kind of keep in contact, as, if anything ever changes as his status, I'm sure we'll get together, but time's running out here. We're getting a little old. So, but anyway, that's how Truck Stop came to be. And
because I was curious about the ending on that. I don't want to spoil it or anything.
I'm waiting for the ending to happen. That's what. and I don't know if I can write another story to it. So there might be more to that story someday. I don't know. So that's the bit about that. So there you go.
Well, that's actually pretty interesting, because I was like, it sounds like a memoir of some kind.
Well, here's the other thing. Like I say, I told you, I wrote Coast to Coast, and I ended it with her going to see the high school boyfriend. And then in 2016, 6 years later, we meet up, And so when I was writing the cat book, Activate Lion Mode, which touches on sex trafficking, and I did all the research for that, ugly, ugly stuff, hard to read about. And but I say, and that's one reason it drove me to start think about Truck Stop. And anyway, so
Now,
when
so
I
which-
wrote the book before Truck Stop was called The Grieving Gift, and it dealt with my sister. She was dying, and I took care of her, and then dealing with family and stuff and whatever. So I had promised my sister that I would go back to Springfield, Illinois after she passed, and I would go to all our haunts and think of her. And so, and again, this is before he had contacted me and found me. And so I the day 2 days after my sister passed away, and somewhere in that time, when I was taking care of my sister, I was kind of starting, you have to kind of face your mortality when you start dealing with people dying that you love. And she was like my best friend. And I had decided, I really don't want to. I've been single my husband's been gone for 18 years, so that long. And I had spaces where I was single before him. But so I said,
so basically,
well, I didn't want to die alone. I didn't want to die alone like she was. She was single as well. And I says, I'm ready to do something. So anyway, my sister passes away. 2 days after she passes away, my daughter contacted me, who I hadn't heard from in 16 years. And I really thought she was dead or brain dead from drugs, because we had been estranged because of that. And so anyway, she was doing well, and she was sober and had a nice family and two granddaughters. And one of the reasons we were estranged, because her first granddaughter, I had turned her in first into CPS because she was using and everything else. And she had this little girl, and my husband and I used to take her, and I felt so bad for her. And so anyway, that's how we became estranged. My daughter knew I'd turned her in and just quit speaking to me. And that was the end of that. Mm-hmm. So anyway, now she's sober and everything else. And that really is the grieving gift. But then a few months later is when the high school boyfriend found me. And I'm thinking, wow, there's that going too, so but when my daughter told me about her two daughters, she says, well, Jessica, and that's the one we used to take, her oldest, she had two girls, and she says she's doing her own thing. Come to find out, she had ran away from home at the age of 14, and she has been a prostitute all that time. And I'm going, oh my God, my granddaughter is a prostitute, and I know what that's like. I've done all the research on it. And my daughter was struggling, trying to get her out of that life, and couldn't understand why she couldn't. I did understand. And she was dying of AIDS and valley fever and a meningitis. And I got to see her before she passed. She was quite sick, and I got to talk to her. She remembered me, and I was able to love her in a way that my daughter couldn't, because my daughter was so angry with her that she, and I knew about it. I could enable to even converse with my granddaughter. You had to have my ear almost up to her face, because she was so weak I could hardly hear her. But we talked, and like I asked her, I says, if you had a 16-year-old daughter right now, would you want her to go back? Because she said she would go back if she got well to the life. And she says, no, I wouldn't. And she talked, there's so many poignant things that she said about how you never know what to expect when you go on a trip. And she asked, and I had just finished the book, Activate Lion Mode, but I hadn't come up with a title, and I was struggling with title. And I told her, I says, I wanted to use the title Spitting the Game. And I knew nobody would understand that. And it was quite crass. And I says, you know what that is, don't you? And she says, yeah, I know. I says, but so anyway, couldn't use that. And I don't know if you know what spitting the game is, but it's a term that the prostitutes that go out and solicit women and do that. It's called spitting the game when they try to get another girl to come into that
into that life.
profession. Yeah. So anyway, so there you go with that. So,
but you injected that part of it because of what you learned from your granddaughter into the story.
Yeah.
And it seems to me like every book that you've written has been like personal.
Well, yeah, as I say, I don't know if I'm writing my future or not. I write the first one, and it's about meeting seeing the high school boyfriend again, and then I write Activate Line Mode. And my God, I've done all the research and I'm ready. It's about sex trafficking. I mean, I don't know. So maybe I'm just afraid to write another book. I'm not spring, but
no, don't stop writing.
But so the last the book that I finished that I'm not published yet is called Activate Love Mode. And I had started writing it because Activate Lion Mode is about the cat, and it's a fun novel, about the cat and his travels and all that stuff. And so I thought I was going to write it as him, the cat, being having an old girlfriend that he knew from the streets when he used to live on the streets, that he's going to run into her and want to go see her. So it's kind of the animal version of Truck Stop. I don't know. But anyway, I started writing that, and it was that's how it was kind of going to come down. But what happened is the cat was becoming very old, and it became, and then COVID hit, and I wasn't able to write much, and I was just battling with all that stuff. And so anyway, but then the cat became really old, and I knew he was dying, and I was going to have to put him down shortly. And so it just took forever to finish that book.
Yeah, and that's the next thing I want to talk about, because the Sportster was actually a real cat.
Yes, he was a cat that traveled with
Sportster was the one that traveled with you in your RV all up and down the U.S.
Yep. He was one hell of a cat, and I had to put him down last Christmas.
Oh, wow.
He was 17 years old, and so because I was putting him down, it was very, very difficult to write. I just kept trying to go back and start writing it. But I finally didn't want some sad story. But I have always been writing from an animal's point of view has always been a thing, because I read a book called The Art of Racing in the Rain. And it's a book about a dog, and the book begins with the story begins with the dog being old, and he's peeing in himself. He can't control his bladder. But anyway, but The Art of Racing in the Rain is all from the dog's point of view, and it deals with how his dad is a race car driver, and the author is able to just write a poignant story and have it all be from the cat's point of view. And I says, man, I want to write like that. I want to see how he did that. And I started writing Masada's Marine, all from the dog's point of view, because I thought it would be a cute story. The dog is a puppy, and then it's being trained to become a service dog. So after the puppy trainer, he has to go to the prison and get trained by the prisoners, and then finally he goes to the veteran, so he goes through all these losses to become what he's going to become. And I was writing Masada's Marine from the first person dog point of view, and I was in a writing group, and my mentor kept saying, this is too serious of a book for you to write from the dog's point of view. And I says, oh, you just always write the same book. And so I got about, maybe a quarter into the book, And I was also submitting my work to another critique group that was online. And this one woman come back, and I'd submitted this chapter, and it was a serious chapter. It was heavy. And she, her critique was, "Oh, how cute." And I says, "That is not what I was going for." And I says, "He was right. I got to rewrite it in person, from a different point of view." So, yeah, it's, but I don't know. So,
yeah, well, it like I said, it seems like you've written from personal experience.
yeah.
So where did Sportster come from?
Sportster, I never wanted, I was a dog groomer, and I did groom cats too, but never liked cats, never wanted a cat. I didn't feel like you could train them or whatever. And so somebody had brought him into my grooming shop as a kitten, and they'd found him on the street. And they had said, they wanted to know where the shelter was. And I said, I didn't want the cat, but I says, well, you don't have to take it to shelter. We'll find a home for him easy enough, because he was a little kitten. So the girls that worked for me, and my husband had recently passed away, and so the girls that worked for me said, "Oh, let's make a shop cat out of him." Well, I didn't want a shop cat. I didn't want to take care of a cat, and but that's what kind of happened. And he got spoiled with the girls, and we dressed him in clothes, because we had a whole Harley line of clothes. So that's where everything was Sportster with me back then, because my husband, if you didn't own a Harley, you were nobody, so it was always about Harleys. so the cat was little, so I called him Sportster. But anyway, so that's how he got there. And then one day I says, I'll take him home one weekend, because I didn't take him home on the week, because I left him at the shop. Because sooner or later we had this half door in the grooming area, and once he learned how to jump over that, I had to worry about him getting out. So I took him home, and he was just a cool cat. And I fell in love with him, and
he was your writing companion.
Yes, and he was. My dentist had told me, she says, "No, if you get a pet after someone dies, there could be a piece of their soul in the cat, And I said, so, cats are so aloof anyway. You try and kiss him, and he'd fall off the back of the chair before he'd let me kiss him. The cat, well, the husband was the same way. so I think they were the same. I do. Yeah. But so anyway, yeah. So that's how I got him, and he took to the motorhome well, and he, was on a leash the whole time. We walked on leashes, and just and now. So he's passed away, and how I wrote this last book that just came out is he's passing away, and he dies, and he's worried about his mom being all alone because he's gone. And there's a wildcat that lives in their new place, and she just had kittens, and he talks the wildcat into donating one of her kittens. That's a very troublesome kitten, and she's driving her crazy, because he almost gets run over in the road because he doesn't mind. So Sportster basically says, "Will you, my mom is all alone. Will you give her a kitten?" So anyway, that's so he turns over the torch to the new kitten, and I don't know. I'm not into traveling anymore. It's like the wanderlust is totally gone. So I don't know how. That's part of the reason how I'm struggling. How am I going to get this new kitten who has the coastal name of Sneaker Wave? And I just love that title for a book. I didn't know what a sneaker wave was. Do you know what a sneaker wave is?
I don't know.
Okay.
Well, sneaker wave.
Yeah, well, okay, well, me too, but I live on the coast now. I'm coastal, all authors should live on the coast, I think. It's very coastal, authorial. So anyway, sneaker wave is you're on the beach, and it's a beautiful day, and sneaker waves usually happen between April and October and April. Okay. So during the winter time. And but it can be just a beautiful sunny day on the coast, and the waves are lapping on the shore, and all of a sudden, after they say nine ways, but it's very deceiving because what happens all of a sudden, there's this huge wave that comes up and just crushes the whole shore. And if you're on the shore, of course, they're these king tides. They're also called king tides, and they bring in logs from the rivers and stuff. And so people actually are overwhelmed by these big tides that come in out of nowhere and hit the beach. So they're deadly, So that's and I named him Sneaker Wave because he kept hiding and jumping, how cats do, pouncing on you and everything. So anyway, so all I've got is the first, few paragraphs of the new book written, and it describes the sneaker wave, hitting the beach. But after that, I don't know where I'm going with it. Who knows?
I'm sure you'll come up with something.
All right. So what else do you want to know?
Okay, you've written 8 books. Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The eighth one is not published yet. So,
so it's 7. We'll say 7 conservatively.
Yeah.
And you actually you published your first book around 2007, 2008.
10. Yeah.
10, huh? So that was kind of like, the time frame that everybody was publishing something and actually getting something out of it,
Yes, yeah. Well, yeah, in 2010, the only self-publishers we knew about was CreateSpace, which was Amazon, and I think it was Hulu. And those were the two. And I went with CreateSpace because Amazon, it was Amazon. But now, and I remember going to a Tucson Book Festival, and they have all of these vendors there, and half of them are self-publishing vendors, and I thought, oh my God, I'm so glad that I didn't, it wasn't like that back then, because I would just been overwhelmed. I knew nothing about writing, nothing about anything like that. So
publishing, formatting, or anything. That was a hard time frame to learn because I did worked for Dead Guns Press. Okay, I came up with Dead Guns Press, me and M. Leon Smith. Okay, and we would publish anthologies, the hard-boiled anthologies, and it started out really good.
Right.
And all of a sudden, after a while, I noticed, when it went from CreateSpace to Amazon, they had the Allegorium machine, and it just kind of sunk.
Yeah. And I don't do, I'm on Amazon. All my books are on Amazon and as Kindle books and print books. But somewhere a few years ago, I decided, I'm not going to play the game. I've never paid for advertising on Amazon. And I do really well. At the time I was traveling. Now I don't seem to have the desire to travel, but I was going to go to different small towns and just go to farmers markets, sell my books. I love talking to the people, and I'm now settled here in Brookings, and I'm the author in Brookings.
Yeah, we're kind of like the kings of their domains.
Yeah, well, I'm a what do you call it? Big fish in a small pond. But it was rewarding because when I first moved here, and I would go down to the farmers market with my 7 little books and set up my little table and sell books, and so it was a great esteem builder and confidence builder. Not that I had pretty much felt that my books were pretty good, so I had got past that of wondering and all that, but to have people come back for the second, buy a book at the farmer's market, and then they come back next week and they buy the next one and the next one, and they're also happy, and they tell their friends, this is my friend, she's a famous author. And it's just quite nice. So that's
So
how
you,
I sell my books these days, and I don't know what I've thought about trying to do some interviews with my friends to build up my thing on Facebook, but Facebook just, the whole, I guess that's part of my mood. I just get tired of pushing.
yeah, well, and that's the problem nowadays. It seems like the social media
Futile.
aspect, yeah, it's too much. And believe me, for the last like 10 years, it has sucked away a bunch of time trying to figure out the
Yeah.
algorithm machines and
Right. See, I'm not going to do that. I will.
keywords.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
And I know that you had done some of that. And there was some point, first of all, I don't want to have to learn all that stuff. I don't want to spend half my time in front of a computer trying to figure out how to do something. I mean, this Zoom, I'm going to pretty simple. I can handle that. But I just said there's got to be there's other ways, creative ways of selling books. And like I say, I still have my motorhome. The idea is maybe I'll start going around to the small towns, because it is a fun thing to do, to meet people and actually see your fans. And there's that, and then have them discover. So I don't know, maybe I'll still do that. There's plenty of little small towns around here, but I say the motorhome thing is kind of I don't know. I'm happy here now. The season will be coming up where the sun's coming out now, and we'll be down at the harbor with all the vendors, and all the tourists come to this town. So I will sell my books. And the last couple summers, I would make $200 or $300 on a Saturday. Just selling my books.
Yeah, but
It still amazes me.
Yeah, the thing of it is you sell out sometimes. I mean, there's sometimes
Yeah.
you posted pictures and you're like showing empty boxes. Hey, I did good.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
that's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing that I find impressive, especially independent publishing.
Yes.
When an author can actually write a book and it sells out.
Yeah, well, let me tell you another thing. So the selling, I don't know. When I got to Brookings and I finally decided to settle down, what I really missed, I had the best writing critique group back down south, and I missed them so much. And I would submit online a little bit, but nobody met up with them. And I said, when I settle down, I'm going to join a writing critique group, because that's, to me, what makes a writer. And so there weren't any, because COVID was still happening, and I refused to wear a mask, and I don't believe in that. I'm not going to coy to all that stuff. So I says, I'll just start one of my own. And it struggled for a little bit, because everybody says, well, what do you sit 6 feet apart? Do you do this? And I'm going, I don't know. I don't require anybody to wear a mask, do whatever you want, but I'm not enforcing anything. So anyway, we finally got it started. Everything started calming down, and the people there. So I've got 5 to 6 people some can't make it all the time, but in a critique group, and they're all, all I wanted to do is come here and start a group mainly for me, because I needed feedback, and I like teaching people about writing, how to write well. So that was my intention when I started this critique group, and they're all writing their memoirs, and I am so amazed by what is happening, because I know what happened when I wrote my autobiography, and I found out things about myself that I just didn't know, and it's just incredible. Things that I had gotten pregnant when I was 16 years old in high school, and it wasn't by the high school boyfriend, by the way, just so you know. But when I did, back in those days, this was 1963, I had my daughter. So they really didn't want you to come back to high school. I dropped out of high school because I was pregnant. But when I wanted to come back, they don't want you back. And I think my father must have done something, because he got permission for me to come back to high school. But there were conditions, and the conditions were that I couldn't socialize with the other kids because I probably knew too much, But so if they had an assembly going, I had to go to the principal's office and sit in the principal's office while they had their assembly. And so, and now I'm a very old woman now. And all of these years up until I wrote my autobiography, I said, and I would tell people that story and they say, and I lost my best girlfriends, my 2 girlfriends, never heard from her again. And it's not like there was Facebook or anything else, or you talked a lot on the phone. They just gone. Right. And so all of that stuff, and my parents were very supportive of me. And, but and what I ended up doing was marrying the guy that got me pregnant, because that seemed the easiest thing. My dad offered me 3 options: go away and have the baby, give it up for adoption. And I didn't want to go away from home. I'd never been away from home. I didn't want to go. And right. The other thing was marry the guy. And my father did not want me marrying the guy. The guy was a creepo anyway, and or get an abortion. And my mother had been raised Catholic, and she just gasped, and I could just feel her fear. And for whatever reason, that scared me, because it was illegal to have an abortion. And so I just, the guy said, well, let's get married. And that's the easy way out. And I did it. And after I had the baby, I divorced him. And I think my parents made it an annulment, somehow. I don't know how they did that. But anyway, so the condition was I go back to high school, and when I returned, and I just couldn't socialize with the other kids. Right. And so when I tell that story, people say, oh, that's so terrible. I says, well, it's okay. I just pushed through it. It didn't really bother me. Right. And so I went back when I was writing the autobiography, and my sister had passed away, and I was going back and now I'm also going to see the high school boyfriend too. But I had gone to all the haunts, and I was at high school, and the high school was closed. It must have been off season or whatever. And but back there they don't even lock the door, so I could walk into the high school and walk through the halls and reminisce about the high school. And I got up to the principal's office, and right across from the principal's office was this, I don't know why, but it was this trophy case, and that, of all the stars, the football players and all that stuff. Anyway, I looked in through the windows of this principal's office, and all of a sudden I just thought, why, how in the hell could they have done what they did to me? I mean, the rage that came out of me was just amazing, that I had no idea. And, all my life I had hated self-righteous, religious, hypocritical people. Right. Religious people just bugged the shit out of me. And I know why. I knew that's what it was all about. And because my father was Mormon, my mother was raised Catholic, and obviously they must have given the 2 families the fingers and said, we're getting married, So I'd never had any religious training or anything, thank God, because then I didn't have to think about suicide because I'd been sinned, But anyway, so I had never realized that's why I hated religious people so much, was because of that incident. And that was just one of the discoveries, that I found out about myself by writing this. So, and I didn't have any of that in mind. I just wanted a critique group so I could get my stuff critiqued. But that's what's happening with these women. There's 4 of them, 5. The one comes occasionally because she works, but anyway, you
see the value in critique groups.
Yes, I mean, they're discovering things about themselves that, because I push them, basically when people journal or people think they're writers, because both of these, several of these gals says, well, I got the book written, I just need to, I don't know how to put it together and all this. Well, most people just write a report about their life. I did this, I did that, I did this, and so I says, well, to write a good book that people will want to read, you have to tell that you are that character, and you have to know why the character does what he does. You know, why did he screw around and sleep all over when she was young? You know, why did she do that? You know, so you have to start looking at that. And so they're all great gals, and they're studying now and learning how to delve deeper. But this one gal said she was adopted, and her mother, adoptive mother, went to jail for she worked as a bookkeeper. And so what do you call it when you steal money from the company? Whatever. Embezzled, yeah. So she went to jail for embezzlement. And so my gal in my group, she says, she went, that's all I really know about her, is she had to go to jail. And so we're talking about, the group is saying, well, she told us what she did know and how this woman had taken her in because she had a mother who went to jail, and she went to this adoptive woman. And she says, I just assumed, she had taken her in, and then she even arranged, because she knew she was going to jail for embezzlement, to get her in another home, a Christian home, and everything else. And so, a good woman, And so we're all saying, well, that just doesn't make sense. I says, more than likely, I says, I would say she worked as a bookkeeper in this hospital. I think her boss, they set her up and blamed it all on her because she was just a measly bookkeeper that could do that. I says, I bet you the boss did the embezzling, not you. And she says, I says, because it just doesn't make sense that she would be so caring and loving and everything else, but yet she embezzles money and she's taking care of these kids. She wasn't the only one. And she says, wow, I never looked at it that way. And I says, well, you can write it that way because you have literary license. But I think that's really what happened. We all agreed. And she just was a different person after that, Right. And another gal just published her first book, my first published author now in my little critique group. And she had written about her daughter who was preemie cerebral palsy, coming from a drug family, and that she raised from a preemie, and taking care of this girl. And it was life consumed her life. But she was driven and since had passed away. And she told me after she published the book, she says, before I wrote this book, because all she talked about was this daughter, and she also had a best friend who committed suicide. But she talked about this daughter and everything, and life, and what she'd done, and all this. And she says, before I wrote the book, the pain of her loss, of her death, just drove me. And she says, now I have control of it. And she's just a totally different person than she was. Her self-esteem and her confidence, and she's an author now. And I mean, to see these people just change in front of my eyes, I mean, I am just loving doing this. Right.
So it's the power of writing a story and the power of publishing.
Yeah, because writing is healing. And when you discover all those, all our characters, when we write a book, the main character always has this lie that he believes, but it's not true. Everybody else, or maybe his good friends, know it's a lie, and he isn't really that way, but he believes it. And it all comes from real life. We all come to this table right now with the idea that we're somebody that we're not. I always believed I was a slut because I slept around a lot. And until I wrote my autobiography, did I realize, no, I wasn't. And so life is just amazing, I think. And
well, it's human nature anyway.
Yes, it is. It sure is.
But so now you're constantly learning about the self-publishing world. Okay.
No.
Because it's a constantly ever evolving beast. That's one thing I've noticed over the past 10, 15 years.
Yes.
So
I don't. Go ahead.
Where do you see the future of self-publishing going? Because I notice there's like a movement not to really publish with Amazon strictly, but to publish with other groups like Ingram Sparks which is the big dog.
Yeah.
And
Well, I'll tell you, John, maybe it's because I'm getting old now and I don't want to be bothered with that. I decided when COVID hit and all these crazy things that were going on, I says, I bought this little house here in Brookings, and I live across the street from the river, 3 miles from the ocean. And I says, I'm up here on this hill, and this is the hill I'm going to die on because, let the world whirl and do whatever they want to do. This is me.
Well, it is a crazy world, but in a lot of ways, it can't stop us from writing.
And I've just decided, I don't even watch TV because I don't want to hear all of that stuff. But I believe that there's Amazon just never was in control. I mean, yes, they build themselves up, but when did you start writing? When did you?
Man, this was like early 2000s.
Okay, all right. So you had to deal with publishers at one point then.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So see, I did. I came and Create Space when I came, and self-publishing had just taken off. They bent over backwards helping you, and now they're no different than any other big. What are the big 5 or the 4 now? Whatever, because Amazon killed off some of the big publishers, and so they're no different than the big 5. They're just another publishing company, in my opinion. So what I think that people are, and again, I am no expert and I don't really know, but this is my feeling, especially when COVID hit, people were flocking from the cities to smaller towns to get away from this, whatever this is. And I think, Amazon is just another big shot. And everybody falls when they get too big. I don't know if they will or not now, and they may fall because what's this new AI publishing? You can tell them I want my book to be historical novel, and it just writes the book for you. Have you heard of that? I forget what it's called.
I had heard about that.
Yes,
and
it's a thing. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yes, and
I think it was last year I was reading into it, and I'm like, no, that just takes away the personal element.
And so all of those things. It's like worrying about somebody stealing your thing. I don't know. I don't believe. I think I am meant to write, and I think I have a story to tell, and I think that we each are individuals and in charge of our own life, or as much as we are, somebody else is in charge. And I write. Probably you the same thing. People ask me when I get interviewed, where do you get your ideas? And in the beginning, I struggled with that question, but I was volunteering at the Tucson Book Festival one time, and his name was, well, you may know him because he's kind of Arizona, New Mexico. I think it's Urias is the last name, Urias. I think it's Leon. But anyway, he was new when I was volunteering, and he was doing a seminar. Anyway, I remember somebody asking him. He writes about immigration and the Mexicans and a lot of deep stuff.
Right.
Anyway, he and an excellent writer too. But they asked him, "Where do you get your ideas?" And he said, sometimes God gives you the ideas. And I mean, I always think it's incredible the books that I've read. I write Going Home with a Cat and a Ghost, that she's going to meet her high school boyfriend, and I meet my high school boyfriend, and I write about sex trafficking, and I meet my daughter who's had been a prostitute since she was 14, so I do believe that ideas come from maybe the divine if you're in touch with that. Right. So all of that said, I refuse to believe that Amazon's in charge or anybody else is in charge. And if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And we all know, as struggling writers, if you've been in it, the new writer is all they want to do is know what's trending and let's write about that. And when you attitude, you might write something trending, but I'm want to do something substantial. And because if I just here to make money, most people won't make it, and I know a lot of authors that just really struggle because all they want to do, be on the bestseller list. And to me, that's not what it's about. And
no,
who picks those bestsellers anyway?
Yeah, a bunch of corporate lawyers.
Yeah. So,
but the way I look at it, because I've seen the change all along from mid 2000s all the way up till now.
Yeah.
And we've just made leaps and bounds in self-publishing, and it's gotten exceedingly difficult. And what I've noticed is a lot of writers that were hitting it big, like 10 years ago, they were on top of the world. They were, making all kinds of money. And now you don't even hear about it, because they fell off the face of the earth. They're not riding the wave anymore with the Allegora machine.
Or maybe they're writing, maybe you don't hear about them because maybe they're writing about something that they don't want.
And there's that. And then also, people are trying to write about trends. All of a sudden there'll be a trend and these people are trying to catch up, and it's like, no, that's not going to work. So me personally, I prefer just to write the story that I want to write.
Yes.
And if it hits a trend, well, then it hits a trend. If it doesn't, I'm not going to worry about it.
Yeah, well, I believe anything will trend if you write it well and write truth, and that's hard to do sometimes. But so I say, as far as for me, where it's going, I don't know.
The AI thing is a little terrifying. At least, it's concerning because, as writers, we don't understand it fully.
Yeah.
And it could be a new advancement in writing. I don't know. But I think it takes away from the personal aspect of a person actually sitting down.
Definitely. Yeah. But there's AI art, visual art,
I played around with that.
Yeah.
Too recently, and I'm like,
my other friend did too, but he was talking, and I was going to see if I could find his email because he talked about the writing, the part of it, the AI, and it's something bot. I can't remember where it is, but anyway, because I met a guy here where I live, and he was the one that first told me about that. And I says, we all get worried. We worry about a goddamn virus. We worried about AI. We worry about all this, and whatever it be, I don't know. I just I've subscribed to an app called Nice News. Yeah. And in Nice News, they talk about all the great inventions that have happened, that are happening now, and all the things and good things that people are doing. And that there's a lot of things, I think we are what we focus on. So I refuse to focus on anything. Everybody. I don't care. Would go because I just create my own reality, and I'm sorry, but I don't have to make a lot of money. It's not like I have a family, and so I'm a little, I'm being a little. It's not realistic, maybe, but if I find a way of hitting the best, I was like this close to the bestseller list on my very first book. But the reason, not because nobody could buy a book for $1.99, and so you could sell a book easily and then there was that. I mean, it was still a good book, but with self-publishing and Kindle, to be able to buy a Kindle book for any book for 99 cents. It was impossible until Kindle came along. So that's how I almost hit the bestseller list. But it will be what it'll be. And I just, I'm grateful that I don't have to, write well. I have this desire to write something, but what I want to say, you have to say it. Yeah. It's may not be, of course, the other sex trafficking, nobody wants to hear about that either. So I don't know why I'm balking, but I am. Maybe it's too personal. It's too scary. What's happening. Maybe what I want to write in AI or how the algorithms, there's this way of censorship without really censoring, so
Right.
I don't know how it's all going.
I think it's an interesting future.
Yes. Always.
So
yeah.
it's like I tell people, it's okay to keep the finger on the pulse.
Yes.
But you don't have to follow the trends.
Yeah. And in the end, like I say, to me, it's what's in your heart, write about that and you'll be okay.
Yeah.
And that's, I change lives all the time. I can't tell you how many, the feedback I get from these books, because not just always, there's a guy, Masada's Marine is one of Masada's Marine and Coast to Coast. Not too many feedback on Truck Stop. I don't think they don't have the courage always to. But anyway,
Probably.
Yeah,
but it's still a good book.
Yeah, yes, but
where can people reach you?
Well, all my books are on Amazon. Judy Howard, and my website is judyhowardpublishing.com. Although I don't, people think I took that because it was available. But I don't really publish for other people. So, but yeah, judyhowardpublishing.com. And I say Amazon under Judy Howard. Don't confuse me with the Judy Howard that was Ron Howard's wife. Maybe I have that going for me, but she's since passed away, so now it's only me. But anyway, yeah.
I'm gonna provide links down below.
Okay, cool.
For all that, but we're running out of time.
Okay,
so
again. I can talk forever. As you see.
But here's Judy Howard's book, Truck Stop. If I can
it's in the background. My goodness, I just want to thank you. The cover is just perfect. I just love my cover. John, if you folks don't know, he's a great book cover designer.
When I choose to be, sometimes I don't really push it, but this is you can pick up a copy of this book along with Judy Howard's books. Amazon.
Or else you can come to Brookings, Oregon this summer and look me up and I'll sign your book.
There you go. Yeah. Matter of fact, I got mine signed.
Yes, you did. Yeah. Well, you can also, I can also mail you one signed, but it would be more fun to come to Brookings.
There you go.
It's beautiful here.
Judy, it's been great having you on the show.
Okay.
And thanks.
Thank you for inviting me. This is great. I get to know you better. I'm always going to stop and say hi to you, and I never have gotten to do that.
No, it's been a couple of years. So,
yeah.
You know what? That's what happens when life kind of catches up, and you get too busy, you get swept away, and then you forget, about, all the time that went by, and you're like,
yep.
But it's good having you on the show.
Thank you.
I appreciate you, contributing and everything, and giving life advice and writing advice. So
well, I say I can't stop talking. That's why I never write short stories. If I can't say it in 120,000 words, I can't say it. So.
Okay.
All right. Well, Judy, thank you very much for inviting me. It's been really fun.
Yeah, it has been fun and it's been interesting, and I do appreciate your time.
Okay. Have a great one.